everybody. Will here with this week's interview chair. This week we have on the chair Terry Hundt, one of my very favorite people. I can't wait for you all to hear this. Hi, everybody. This is Will, and this week on the interview chair, we have none other than Terry Hundt. How are you, Terry?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Will?
Good. It's been a while, and it took a while to catch up to you too. So,
Right.
how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. I'm, living life good.
Oh, good.
Not a lot of judging right now, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I think we discussed off screen that we're both going to see each other in Westchester, so that'll be fun.
Right.
So,
That's right.
all right, let's get started. Tell me how you got started in the sport of dogs, and how old were you when you started?
I did not start in the sport of dogs until I graduated from college. I was not allowed, good Italian family, to have a dog when I was a child. So when I graduated, the first thing I wanted to do was get a dog. And I kind of went through some of the books and stuff. I saw a Weimaraner I thought was nice. I saw a short hair pointer I saw that was very nice. And I thought, well, that's a good breed, short hair, blah, blah, blah. Then a friend of mine said, come with me. I'm going to visit somebody that has a Doberman. I said, a Doberman? I don't think I want a Doberman. But I went, and the dog, unfortunately, was not a friendly dog. He was one of these that would sit there and go, oh. So after that meeting, I said, I don't think that's the dog for me. She said, well, I'm going to look at a litter of puppies. I said, okay. So I went to Massachusetts. At this time, I was teaching in Massachusetts. I went to Massachusetts with her at the other end and saw the litter of puppies and fell in love immediately. I bought one of the puppies. The kennel name was Lordor, which was an older couple. And actually they were friends of, I've forgotten her name, but she was an AKC rep and also a handler many, many years ago. And she did handle Dobermans. So I checked with her and so forth, and everything was on the up and up. So I bought this dog puppy, and he was just the greatest. He was one of these, you can do anything you want to me. I don't care. I love everybody in the whole world. And one day I went to the breeder's house with him because his ear wasn't coming up. And Monroe Stebbins and his wife, Natalie, were there. They were showing, the breeder had a German import.
What year was this, Terry?
1963.
Okay.
You made me say that year, right?
Well, when you mentioned Monroe, I had to get a time frame.
Yeah. Well, so he looked at the dog. Actually, the puppy was out of his dog, Champion Top Skipper, who he and his wife had. Stebb's Top Skipper had for many years and did a lot of breeding, and he was a prominent sire in our breed. And what did I know? I didn't know anything about that. So he said, you want to come to a show? And I'm like, what kind of a show? So there was a show in the area right where I lived and taught. So I went and I got hooked. And he said, do you want to show this dog? I said, well, do you think you can make a champion out of him? Because he was such a sweet dog and he was not a show dog. But I went to shows and he finished him. So that's how I got started.
Monroe showed him for you?
Monroe showed him for me, yep. And I got hooked on the whole scene. And somebody wanted to use him as a stud dog. And I checked around and to see if it was actually one of my vet's clients. So I said, okay. And took a puppy from that litter, and that puppy's name was Fanfare's Ringmaster, who was a dog Monroe showed for me as a special and was in those years a top 20 Doberman. Now, in order for me to afford to pay for this, I helped Monroe and his wife. I started helping them at dog shows. I would travel from Massachusetts to Long Island, where they lived, on Fridays, met them, and then go to the dog shows with them, come back home for classes on Monday morning. And I did that.
You have to tell me about Monroe, because I obviously I never met him, but I worked for his son, Bob, and I always
You
hear
work
these
for
stories.
Bob? I didn't know you
Yeah,
worked
I work for Bob.
Oh my
That's when
God!
I first met you. I first met you when I worked for Bob.
Well, what would you like to know about Monroe?
Anything you want to tell me, because I hear what a gentleman he was, and
He was a gentleman to the nth degree. He was honest to the nth degree. He would never ever do anything out of the realm of law. He was a fantastic handler. I tell you, I used to look in the ring and say, because I used to trot the dogs back and forth from the truck to the ring to him. That's not the same dog I just brought back. I mean, he made them look so great in the ring. You didn't know which one was which. And I learned so much. And actually, I moved back to Connecticut because I'm originally from Connecticut, because they moved to Connecticut. And so when they moved to Connecticut, I moved back to Connecticut and I lived with them. I got another job in Connecticut and I lived with them. I think it was for about 4 years. So I just traveled to the dog shows with them. And then when I got my own place, I still traveled to the dog shows with them.
It's amazing. The guy, he's a figure in history that I obviously didn't know, but you never, ever hear a bad thing about him, ever.
No, there was nothing bad to say. He loved the dogs. They loved him. He took good care of his dogs, and as a handler, I was so confident becoming a handler because I learned so much. In those days, there were assistant handlers that we applied for, and I was an assistant handler, and I was so proud of that. Oh boy!
So how you were with Monroe and his wife for about 4 years, you said? Or
I lived with them about 4 years, but I also was with them prior to that, maybe 3 years, something like that, where I went from Massachusetts back and forth. So, and they were my family, and Bobby and his son Bucky and his daughter Susan. It was just great.
I'm sure, yeah. So when did you go out on your own then?
Monroe decided that he was going to resign from handling and become an AKC rep. So as an AKC rep, I had, of course, get my own place, which I did, not too far from where they lived. And I think that was, I can't remember. I got a new job right down the road, 20 miles down the road, bought a house, had a kennel put in and everything, and taught every weekend. I went to dog shows, taught 5 days a week, came home, rested up, and off to dog shows I went. And I did that for several years. And then it wasn't unusual just to be a dog show handler on the weekend then. But then I decided I took a sabbatical from the school that I was teaching at, and to see financially how that would work out. And after that sabbatical, I had to go back and make up that 6-month term, which I did. And then I became a professional handler. So that's my story.
That's not the whole story. So you're on your own now. How did that? What happened then?
Well,
Do you still lean on Monroe for advice, or?
I inherited some of his clients, and I saw him, quite often. If I had questions, I would always ask him. what this, what that. I learned all about how to do my books and how he did his and stuff all ahead of time. And, you know, what insurances should have and blah, blah, blah. I learned a lot after that. But, you know, it took a little while to get into the routine with the traveling and everything. But I loved it from the start. So, you know, it was great. I had some nice clients. I started off pretty good. I think my first best in show was from the open black bitch class.
Wow. Now, what year would that have been?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I can't even tell you. I can tell you this, that in the best in show ring was the German wire hair pointer of Pat Lawrence and Joy Brewster's. And I beat her for best in show. My bitch beat her for best in show. That was not a happy time for all of us, but we were friends, and it was good. It was just fantastic. So, and things went along for many, many years. From there, I did, you know, I stayed with it until I think it was 1998. Yeah, something like that. I quit handling. You know, your aches and pains show up after lugging Doberman crates and doing all that stuff. Fortunately, I got involved with. I got some really nice dogs from other breeds to handle, and so I became a little bit more noted as a handler. I had wire hair German. I had wire hair dachshunds from Peggy. And that was the most fantastic thing. One of my favorite dogs, and I probably shouldn't say this, was Froggy. Do you remember Froggy?
No.
No. Scottish Deerhound from Canada. Janie was showing her, and then Janie and Bob retired. So Gail Bonteque was the owner. Yeah. And Gail gave her to me to show, and I absolutely fell in love. I think we both did. It was just amazing.
Where was she from in Canada? Do you remember? What was her kennel name?
I don't remember. Allstains, Joie de Vivre, her registered name was. And they called her Froggy. Yeah, AULDSTANES. Yeah, well, you were probably still a kid then. Who knows? But she was just a fun dog. She was just, you know, she lived with me a lot, and she was great, just great. Well, but there were many, many, many good dogs. Many dogs that I would have liked to have owned too.
Who was your first prominent dog? Do you remember?
Well, let's see. And Dobermans. I guess I can't really remember. Not that I owned, but one that I handled there were many prominent ones, but one that comes to mind and still has a record is a fawn bitch that Betty Clark, who still breeds Dobermans here in the United States, is the only fawn Doberman to ever have gone best in show and still has that record. Her name was Ravenswood 2020. Oh. And 2020 was because both her parents, Sire and Dam, were top 20 winners. Oh. And she was a Looney Tune. I mean, not vicious or anything like that, but you really had to be with her every minute in the ring or wherever you were, because she was 14 steps ahead of you. And she was a gorgeous bitch. So that was one. And I loved my other breeds. I loved Froggy. She did a lot of good winning. At the time I showed her, she was the top winning Scottish Deerhound of all time. And of course, that record has been broken many times since then. And Peggy's Dachshunds, we had wonderful luck with. Wonderful luck. Many best in shows.
Who would you consider your mentors as a handler?
As a handler?
Yeah. I'm gonna
Um,
wait to put the judge's hat on afterwards.
well, what do you mean as a handler?
Well,
My men.
obviously Monroe was a big influence on your handling. Was
Oh
there
yeah,
anybody else that you looked forward to or looked?
Janie and Bob. Janie and Bob lived right down the road, a half an hour from me. And if I would have a lot of questions, he helped me with grooming the wire hairs. He helped me with knowing how to keep their coat the way they're supposed to. I didn't know any of that. I had some experience with coats when I was working for Stead because we showed a lot of Bouviers and some working breeds that had coats. But this was different. And Janie, when I started handling, she would, any dog that she needed help with, I got to show, which was fantastic. I loved everything because I would go in with breeds I didn't even know what they were sometimes, And right from the start, even when I was working with Monroe, she would come over and say, "Step, can Terry come over and show?" So it was great. They were my three big mentors right there.
Great mentors.
You got that right. Yep.
When did you decide you wanted to judge? Did you decide before you retired or?
No, I did not. As a matter of fact, excuse me, I was convinced I didn't want to judge. I was living in Maryland at the time with my partner, and we decided to move to Connecticut. We bought a house up here, and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't really think I need to judge. And then I got a couple of people, one named Maribeth O'Neill, two named Patricia Lawrence, who got on my case. You have to do, I don't have to do it. Yes, you do have to do it. So I decided I would apply.
That'd
And
be a bit intimidating. So you probably have.
You think? Well, Maribeth worked for me.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
When I was a handler. Oh, yes. I forget how long, but we had great times together. And yeah, a couple of years, actually. Yeah, when she was teaching in Long Island and I was living in Connecticut and I had my license and everything, she would go to show. She was sometimes showing the Toy Manchesters. And because that's how I met her family, because Monroe showed Lorelei, their top Toy Manchester that won so much. And Maribeth was a kid then. And she would come to the shows with me once in a while to show in juniors. So that's how that story goes. I know. Lots of names.
Yeah. Crazy.
I had some wonderful experiences with a lot of great people.
Who else were your assistants that you can recall?
Let's see. Mostly, Maribeth I had, and then I had a young lady. Well, I had several in the meantime for, like maybe on this circuit one, that circuit one. But I had a young lady whose mother they lived in Duncan in Pennsylvania. And Shelley was 15 when she came to work for me. And a cutie. Oh my God, she was good. She was good with the dogs. She showed. She got to the point where I could send her in with any dog, and my clients loved her. She was with me quite a few years. She now has two boys. One is just graduating. One is in college, and the other one is getting ready to graduate from high school, if you can believe that. Yes. Yes.
So you're still in contact, and that's great.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And her mother is a doll. Her mother shows standard Manchesters now. So, and she got actually one of my favorite dogs, too. I have a lot of favorite dogs. Was a little Manchester bitch. And I was showing her just as I was finishing up my career, and I loved her to death. She was a cutie. She would sit in the desk drawer when I was doing, I can tell you stories you won't believe about any of them.
They're a fun breed, though. They really are.
Yes. Oh, I love them. I had Cheddar, who was a male one that lived with me when my mother was living with me. And he loved my mother, would sit on her lap. And he was owned by Bob Bishop, who you don't know, but Bob Bishop was the curator of the dog museum, not the dog museum, the Museum of Folk Art in New York for many, many years. I have a wonderful picture here that he gave me. And, but I got to love that breed very, very much too.
They're very personable. I've had a few of them, and I remember growing up watching them. I remember Billy Pace had one named Sandy when I was a kid that I fell in love with.
Yep. I remember that one.
Oh, do you? I can still hear him. He was at ringside one time, and these kids were all around Sandy, and he was just out to go on Best in Show. And a little kid went over, and it's me. It sounds a little offensive now, but a little kid went to touch her, and he said, "Get your candy floss hands off my dog."
Very good. Very good. That was good. See, that was a lot better than what I would have said, probably. No, I love kids too. Well,
he was always great to me, Billy was, and juniors when I was a kid. So
yeah,
I remember that. I remember being at ringside, and there was a family of these little kids, and they all had like candy with them. So, and one went to see Sandy right before Best in Show, and he said, "Oh, get your candy floss hands off my dog."
That's right. That's right. And I had a Doberman once. Speaking of kids, I had a Doberman once that I showed for a breeder in Louisiana, and I loved the dog. He wasn't the greatest Doberman, but he had a temperament. But he was a very strong-willed Doberman. And I'll tell you, if there was any nonsense going around, he knew it, and you knew he knew it.
Wow.
I had a judge once. I forget who the judge was. I know who the judge was, and he's still alive, so I'm not going to mention his name. But in the breed ring, he decided he was going to do a temperament test. So his temperament test was to come up and stare the dog in the eye. And as he did that, I could feel the tension. And I said, "I don't think I would do that." And he looked at me and he said, "Okay, open the mouth." But I mean, he didn't do anything, but he was ready.
Yeah, you can say I've had.
But I love that. I love that dog. He was. I used to send Shelley, the young lady I was telling you about. She wanted to go out with the kids at night because she was young, and I didn't. You take him with you.
I always had Boogie. I used to send my assistants off. They wanted to go wandering. Okay, you're taking him with you.
That's right. And she would take him with her, and he was right there. He knew.
Amazing.
Many nice memories I've had. I'm very thankful for my years in dogs.
Well, we made some memories too. So, judging now. When did you start judging?
I started, I believe, in my first assignment was in 1999. And I believe my first assignment was might have been Greenwich. I can't remember which show it was some local show, which I was not happy about because, all my peers were right there. And I was already nervous, and I'm going in the ring going, "Oh my God, what's going to happen if I don't put so-and-so?" All the things that go through your head. Stupid. But I had a great time. And the rep there was Bubbles. Remember Bubbles? I even forgotten her real name. She was from the Midwest. Isn't that awful? Oh my gosh. Anyhow, she was just wonderful. That's great. That's great. And then I said to her one time, "I'm really upset about what I did in Malamutes. You don't ever say that. You did it. It's over. Go on to the next thing." And I learned a lot from that, because we all make mistakes, believe me. And the thing is not to fuss over them because then you screw yourself up mentally,
Who would you consider? Do you have a mentor, a judging mentor that you looked up to that guided you?
Janie, obviously, Pat, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I had Janie right in my area. Who else do you?
Yeah,
What else is there?
that'd be perfect.
As a handler, as a judge, as a friend, all the way around.
Yeah. I was always in such awe of them when I was a child. I remember going to the cherry blossom circle with Mr. Eldridge, and they were there, and it was like, oh my God, there they are.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I used to sit by the ring and watch them. You learn so much that way. You really do. That's. And Steb always used to say to me when I was working for him, if we had a break, because, lots of times we showed Dobermans and nothing else, maybe Bouviers. We didn't have a great Ridgebacks, He'd say, okay, you got 2 hours off, get over to those rings and go and watch this breed, that breed, that breed, and that breed. And that's how you learn.
That's amazing, because that Bob did that with me.
Oh, really?
Whenever we had a break, he'd say, okay, I want you to go to ring 2 and watch Eugene Blake show a Saluki. I want you to go here and watch so-and-so. I want you to go here. Yep. That's what he did to me.
Yep.
I learned a lot.
Exactly right. That's right. And I remember too. Yep. When I first started handling, when I first started working for Monroe, he'd say to me, soundness, and I didn't know soundness. Okay, I know they move, they have to move a certain. You go and sit by that Siberian Husky ring and do not move. Those are sound dogs. And in those days, you never saw one that wasn't. And you learned.
Well, yeah, that would ingrain you, wouldn't it? That'd be a good
yeah.
So you've judged some really amazing shows. What have you got? Some that are highlights to you?
Well, obviously my group judging at Westminster, working in sporting were the highlights. But I judged my national specialty a couple times, and Best of Breed was 1 year, a couple of years ago, actually, just not that long ago. I loved doing that. It was a disappointing and yet a great feeling, you know what I mean? Because I was disappointed sometimes in the quality, but I found what I thought was a gorgeous bitch, and she went on to do a lot of winning in all breed shows, so I was pleased about that. And she's got some pretty puppies on the ground.
Oh, good.
Yep.
So what's next? What do you have for judging? Sporting, working,
and part of the hound group. I never went for the rest of it. I guess I shouldn't say this, but I started getting discouraged with dog shows. And a couple of years ago, well, more than a couple of years ago, I found the quality wasn't where it should be. And I thought there were way too many dog shows, which definitely hurt.
Hand in hand, though, and there's that many.
Definitely hurt the quality.
Down, so.
Exactly. Definitely hurt the quality. I mean, I judged a show not too long ago. I think there were 350 dogs. And I'm like, why?
Yeah, just so many of them.
And I mean, there were majors. There were majors for different breeds at those shows. We used to have 35 bitches for a 3-point major. Now 5 dogs, males. It's terrible.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is.
We have that problem up here too. We have too many shows up here too.
Yeah. Well, and so I decided I was, to answer your question, I was comfortable with what I had, and I was just going to stay with what I had. Yeah. So that's what I did.
That's good. What about advice? If I were to ask you, as a judge, what advice would you give me?
I think the most important thing is to be confident in yourself, regardless of whether it's a dog that's done 500,000 best in shows and it comes in your ring and you don't like it. You don't like it. Don't put it up just because it's won. Confidence is an important thing in judging, because I think lots of judges are swayed by other judges. Lots of judges are swayed obviously by all the publicity. And it's easy to do that. It's much harder to stand there and do what your gut feeling is, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Though it has become so easy because there is you're still not supposed to look at the catalog and whatnot, but you can just find it online and you can see who won yesterday if you want to.
And you're sitting at the ring the day before, and then you're judging the next day. What's the difference? You know, that's what I mean about confidence. You have to know, okay, I didn't like that dog that so and so put up. It doesn't mean he didn't like it. I don't like it, so I can't put it up just because he liked it. Do you know what I mean? It's a hard thing to come around to. Believe me.
One of the most important lessons I learned was, as to be a judge, you need to be selfish. So, and I always, but I haven't judged a lot yet. But whenever I go in there, I try that goes through my mind.
Yep, that's right. That's right. That's a good word.
It is. Over the years, don't talk about any dogs that are being shown now, but what about dogs that you've seen that you wished you could have maybe been a part of or shown?
I think one dog that I've always loved was a red Doberman bitch that Andy Linton showed many years ago and went best in show with at Westminster.
Oh, Indy.
And Indy. And I remember the night because he came out of the group, and I don't know what, I guess I showed in the group or whatever. And he had on, a sports jacket. And I said, "What are you wearing for best in show?"
Oh, I lost your audio. I can't hear.
Oh, I'm still here.
Okay, there we go.
I said, "You're not wearing that for best in show." I said, "You go get a tuxedo and get it fast." I said, "Do you know who's doing best in show?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Get a tuxedo." And I love that bitch. She was fabulous. And I guess I can tell you about another dog. I mean, there are lots of dogs that I would have loved to. But I remember walking in the ring for best in show in the show in North Carolina. And there was an AM staff in there. I had never judged an AM staff. I knew this, read the standard like every judge would do if they're doing best in show. And I put my hands on that dog and I said, "Oh my God, this was a solid rock." He was gorgeous. And of course, that was the dog that Kim showed. Yeah.
Something. He was a prize fighter.
He just went like this, one of those feelings when you do that, But so those
exciting part.
Yep, exactly. That was for me very exciting. I mean, you're doing best in show, you can't go wrong.
Right.
But here again, it's your confidence that lets you do whatever you want to do in there,
Oh, I'm hoping I can do that too. So
You will. I know you will. I think I gave you a best somewhere.
I think you did. The Beagle.
That's right.
Okay, I'll give one more question then, Terry, then I'll let you go. If you were to meet the 20-year-old Terry now, is there any advice you'd give Terry?
If I met the 20-year-old Terry now, I would say I was not a very confident person at that age. I was very shy. I did great in my teaching, in my practice teaching and all of that. But other than that, I wasn't. And I had to learn that. And dog shows helped me with that. Believe me, they really helped me.
Dog shows have helped a lot of us with that.
Yeah. I could go out and teach a class of 90 kids. But the minute I got in front of in the ring,
I'm losing your audio again. Oh, I like it. Yeah.
I don't know why.
Oh, there we go. They're back.
Okay. But,
Lower your head down a bit though, Terry. All I have is your nose now. There we go.
Well, that's a sad thing. Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay. So I think that I was not, as I said, I was shy and not confident at all. Very much of an introvert.
Yeah, dog shows tend to help us that way.
Oh my gosh, yes.
There's a young man up here in Canada. He has beagles. He's slightly autistic, I believe. Just a wonderful young man. And dog shows he's come out of his shell in dog shows. Now he sings national anthems. He just won 3 medals at the Special Olympics. He's
wow.
And his mother told me it's because of dog shows.
Yeah, that's right. Because it gave him the confidence. That's what happened.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
Sometimes a little too much, Yeah.
Well, some of us get too big for our britches. We think the world revolves around dog shows, and then you step in the real world, or no, they don't. I
have to say, I like the real world. It's fun having, time to enjoy other things. When you're a handler, you don't have that luxury,
You're on a circuit, you have no idea what's happening in the real world. So.
No.
Yeah. You're right. That trying to balance is the best way.
Oh, yes.
I don't know how some of the kids do it now with the amount of shows they go to. They seem like they're always on the road.
And I have to say, well, I guess I shouldn't say, but that's okay. So I won't say.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, Terry. I really appreciate your time. I'm glad we could catch up. It was great to catch up. And I can't wait to see you in Westchester.
See you at Westchester. Yeah. Well, let's hope for a pretty day, okay?
I hope so. I'm sure it will.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Take care. Love you.
Love you. Thank you, Terry. That was great. I knew it would be. It was so great to catch up to you. If you like what you're seeing here, make sure you press the like, share, and subscribe button. If you want to find out what's happening in my world, go to Will Alexander's Dog Show Tips. And don't forget about the podcast every Thursday, The Dog Show Drive with myself and Wayne Cavanaugh. Until then, take care, guys.